For 4 long years, he didn't budge. Not through blazing summers, violent storms, or the bitter cold of winter. He sat, and he waited, for someone who never came back. But then, one quiet morning, something no one expected shattered the silence. A single moment unraveled a mystery that had haunted an entire town, and revealed a truth so powerful, it will make you believe in miracles again. This isn't just the story of a dog left behind. It's the story of how unbreakable love found its way back home. Watch until the end, because what happened when he finally stood up will stay with you forever. Along the lonely stretch of Highway 9 just outside the forgotten town of Riverview, a German shepherd named Shadow became more than just a mystery. He became legend. Each morning, commuters would pass him by, perched beside a rusted-out gas station like a statue carved from loyalty itself. Dust clung to his fur. His eyes were locked on the horizon, unmoving, unblinking. It was as if time itself had left him behind. No one knew where he came from. At first, people assumed he was a stray. A few good-hearted folks tried to take him in. Some left food. Others offered shelter. But Shadow never accepted more than a quick bite, and only after they had driven away. If anyone came too close, he'd rise with ghost-like grace, trot a few feet down the gravel, and settle back into his vigil. Watching, waiting. The gas station had long since shut down. Its signs faded, its pumps dry, its walls flaking with rust. But to Shadow it must have meant something. This was his chosen place. He was waiting for someone who once stopped there, or someone who never returned. People whispered stories over coffee and pancakes at the local diner, a worn-out place called Josie's Griddle, run by a no-nonsense woman named Ramona Blake. She was one of the first to notice Shadow's silent vigil. Every morning before sunrise, she'd swing by the old station and leave out a paper plate of scrambled eggs and sausage near the concrete post where Shadow always lay. "Poor thing's waiting for somebody," she told anyone who asked. "God knows who, but it's somebody." And Shadow survived everything. The snowstorms that buried the town, the heat waves that melted asphalt, the howling winds that rattled windows. He never left. Some nights, locals swore they heard him whimpering under the stars, soft, aching sounds that echoed through the silence like a broken lullaby. A few brave souls tried to leash him, a traveling nurse, a passing trucker, even a teenage girl who brought a chew toy and knelt in the dirt whispering gentle words. But Shadow pulled away from them all, not out of fear, not even aggression. It was something else. It was resolve. He wasn't looking for a new home. He was waiting for the one he'd lost. And then, one morning, something shifted. A dusty blue sedan pulled off the highway and idled across from the gas station. The man behind the wheel noticed the dog immediately. His name was Ethan Moore, an independent journalist heading to a nearby town for an unrelated assignment. He'd passed through Riverview dozens of times, but today was different. Shadow was sitting upright, rigid, alert. There was something in his posture that gripped Ethan's attention like a vice. The dog wasn't just waiting, he was expecting. Ethan didn't know it yet, but he was about to uncover a story that would ripple across the internet and into the hearts of millions. A story about a dog, a tragedy, and the kind of loyalty that refuses to die. He had no collar, no tag, no clue to his past, just the silence of a dog who refused to move on. Ethan sat behind the wheel, engine idling, eyes locked on the strange sight before him. The sun was barely up, casting amber streaks across the crumbling pavement, and there was Shadow, still as stone, yet radiating a storm beneath the surface. Ethan reached for his phone and snapped a photo. At first, he thought it might just be a powerful visual for social media, a dog left behind, a haunting scene. But something about Shadow's expression, some buried pain in those tired amber eyes, gnawed at his curiosity. Inside Josie's Griddle, the diner buzzed with early risers. Ethan pushed open the door, and the scent of burnt coffee and fried bacon wrapped around him like a memory. Ramona stood behind the counter, arms crossed, scanning the regulars like a hawk watching her flock. He sat down and without a word, she poured him a cup. You saw the dog. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You read minds now? Ramona smirked. Don't need to. He's the only reason outsiders stop their cars around here. Who is he? Ethan asked, leaning in. No one really knows, she said, her voice softening for the first time. Showed up 4 years ago after that wreck near mile marker 22. Never left. Ethan paused, the coffee halfway to his lips. Wreck? Ramona nodded. Rainy night, family car, slid off the road. Some say they got out. Others, well, you know how stories twist over time. Ethan's heart began to race. That wasn't just a visual. This was a story. And Shadow, this forgotten loyal ghost, was the key to unlocking it. After breakfast, he returned to his car, flipping through news archives on his tablet. He didn't even realize how long he had been searching until his fingers found it. Highway 9 collision, March 2019, a family of 3. Parents pulled from the wreck, their 10-year-old son taken by airlift. But there was one line buried at the bottom of the report. Family dog presumed dead or missing. Shadow. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a dog guarding some random gas station. This was a dog who had stayed behind, after surviving. But why here? The accident site was only a mile up the road. It made sense. Maybe Shadow had fled in panic and found this place familiar, safe. Or maybe, just maybe, he thought this is where they'd return. Ethan stepped out of his car, camera in hand. Across the lot, Shadow sat exactly as he had before, eyes locked on the horizon like a soldier on eternal watch. I don't know who you're waiting for, buddy, Ethan whispered as he hit record, but I'm going to find them. The wind rustled the weeds beside the station. A single car sped past, kicking up dust. And still, Shadow didn't move. 4 years ago, he had a name, a family, and a boy who never left his side, until one rainy night shattered everything. Shadow hadn't always been a ghost. Once, he was a bounding bundle of life and joy in a cozy suburban home in Cedar Valley, belonging to the Turner family. Their 10-year-old son, Landon, had begged for a puppy for months. When his parents, Olivia and Grant Turner, surprised him with a German Shepherd pup on his birthday, Landon cried harder than he had in his life, but out of happiness. From that moment on, Shadow and Landon were inseparable. Landon fed him, walked him, trained him. At night, Shadow would curl up at the foot of the boy's bed, lifting his head any time Landon moved under the blankets. In the morning, he followed him to the breakfast table and waited by the door until Landon came back from school. They were brothers in all but blood. Grant, a quiet man who worked long hours at a construction firm, always took a moment when he came home to scratch behind Shadow's ears. Good boy, he'd say without fail. Watching over the kid? And Shadow always was. But then came that night, the one that left more than scars. It had rained heavily all weekend. Olivia's mother had just undergone surgery, and the Turners had made the trip out of town to visit her. On the return drive, the storm had only grown worse. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up as Olivia gripped the wheel tighter. Landon sat in the back seat, Shadow beside him, head on the boy's lap, lulled by the rhythm of the rain. Then, a flash of headlights. A horn blared. The tires lost grip. The world spun. Metal groaned. Glass shattered. Shadow's body was thrown sideways, slamming into the car door. Landon screamed. And then, nothing but chaos. When Shadow came to, smoke filled his nostrils. The car was sideways in a ditch. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the fog of confusion. People, strangers, were shouting, moving, carrying bodies. He saw Landon, being lifted onto a stretcher. Shadow barked and lunged toward him, but strong arms tried to hold him back. The dog panicked, bit, twisted, broke free. He ran, not away but toward the only thing he understood, the road. He searched for the car. He searched for Landon, but they were gone. Days passed, then weeks. But Shadow never left that stretch of road. He wandered up and down the shoulder, sniffing every car that slowed, listening for a voice that called his name. Eventually, his paws led him to the quiet gas station just a mile from the crash site. It was here, beside rusted pumps and shattered windows, that Shadow built his prison of hope. Because in his heart, he believed the boy would return. And so he stayed. 1,000 stories start with heartbreak, but only a few end with hope. And Ethan was about to write one of them. Back in his car, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Shadow's story was much bigger than just a roadside mystery. There was a weight behind this dog's eyes. Not the wild panic of a stray, but a wounded patience, like he was holding on to something that the world had already let go of. Ethan flipped open his laptop and scoured deeper. He found the original police report from the crash, including the names Grant and Olivia Turner. Their 10-year-old son, Landon, had survived with injuries and was airlifted to a trauma center. The report said the dog had fled the scene. No follow-up, no recovery, nothing. They had never found Shadow. He had been here all along. Ethan leaned back, the screen's glow flickering across his face. The gas station, now overgrown and crumbling, was less than a mile from the crash site. It wasn't coincidence. Shadow hadn't ended up here by accident. He had chosen this place for a reason. Ethan knew then what he had to do. He grabbed his camera gear and carefully approached the edge of the gas station. Shadow lifted his head, ears twitching, but made no move to run. He just watched. Ethan crouched low, camera resting on his knee, and hit record. "This," he began, "is Shadow. He's been sitting in this exact spot for 4 years. He doesn't bark. He doesn't chase cars. He just waits." The lens zoomed slowly onto Shadow's face, where sunlight caught the glint of his golden eyes. The dog blinked but didn't move. No one knows exactly how he got here, but we do know this. 4 years ago, there was a crash on this very stretch of road. A family survived, but their dog didn't. Ethan let the silence settle before continuing. Or so they thought. He ended the video with a single line, the kind of sentence that grabs people by the throat. "If this is your dog, he never stopped waiting for you." He uploaded the clip to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with the caption, "A loyal soul has waited 4 long years beside a gas station, never giving up on his family. His name is Shadow. Do you know him? Find Shadow's family." Then Ethan waited. At first, nothing happened, but within 20 minutes, the video had gained traction. Shares doubled every minute. Comments poured in, thousands of them. "This broke my heart. Please someone help this dog. I don't cry over much, but this wrecked me." And then, buried in a sea of scrolling comments, a spark, one message. Just one. "I think this might be our dog." One video, one comment, and 4 years of silence were shattered in a single heartbeat. On the other side of the country, in a quiet suburban home just outside Willowdale, Oregon, a 14-year-old boy named Landon Turner sat on the edge of his bed, scrolling through messages. He had no idea that the next notification would make his entire world stop. A friend had messaged him, "Isn't this your dog?" Landon clicked at a video without thinking. And then, there he was. His thumb froze mid-scroll. His breath caught. "Shadow?" He whispered the name like a spell he hadn't spoken in years. The video played again. There was no mistaking it. Those eyes, that posture, even the slight tilt of his head when cars passed. It was him, the dog he'd cried for, dreamed about, grieved, alive. "Mom!" Landon's voice cracked as he ran down the hallway, his phone clutched in trembling hands. "Mom, come quick!" Olivia was folding laundry in the living room when her son burst in, tears already welling in his eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, alarmed. Landon could barely speak as he handed over the phone. "Look, look." She stared at the screen. Shadow's still, patient face filled the frame. Olivia covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God!" Grant walked in just as the video ended. "What's going on?" Landon turned to his dad. "It's him. Dad, it's Shadow. He's alive. He's been waiting all this time." Grant stared at the screen, eyes narrowing with disbelief, then widening with recognition. "No way. That can't be." But it was. The comments section confirmed the video's location. It was the same stretch of road where their lives had changed forever. The place they had left behind, assuming their dog had vanished into the woods or worse. Without hesitating, Olivia opened her laptop and tracked down the name attached to the post. Ethan Moore. She sent a direct message, her fingers trembling. "That's our dog. His name is Shadow. Please, please tell me he's still there." Across the country, Ethan's phone buzzed. He read the message twice, then a third time. His heart thundered in his chest. "That's our dog. Please tell me he's still there." This wasn't just a story anymore. This was the moment Shadow had been waiting for. Ethan typed quickly. "He's still here. He never left. He's been waiting at the gas station for 4 years." Seconds later, his phone rang. He answered instantly. "Ethan?" The voice on the other end was shaking. "Yes, this is him. Who am I speaking with?" "This is Olivia Turner. Please, tell me this is real." Ethan turned toward the gas station. Shadow was still sitting there, eyes fixed on the road. "It's real," he said softly. "I'm looking at him right now." The family was 10 hours away, but Shadow had already waited 4 years. What was one more night? "We're coming," Olivia said through tears, her voice barely holding steady. "We're leaving now. Please, just don't let him leave." Ethan swallowed hard. "Don't worry, he hasn't left in 4 years. I don't think he ever will." She exhaled sharply. Tell him we're on our way." Ethan glanced toward the gas station, where Shadow sat like a monument carved from loyalty and sorrow. The wind tousled the edges of his fur, but he didn't look back. "I think," Ethan said, his voice cracking, "he already knows." As the call ended, Ethan felt a weight settle on his chest. The kind of pressure you feel when something bigger than you begins to unfold. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a rescue, a reckoning, a miracle. The hours crawled by. Ethan stayed close, never letting Shadow out of his sight. He posted an update on social media, and the internet exploded. Thousands shared, commented, waited. "Has the family arrived yet? Please tell us there's a reunion. I'm crying at work just thinking about this." But as the sun dipped low and long shadows stretched over the cracked pavement, Shadow didn't move. He sat there, eyes fixed on the road, ears twitching at every distant sound. A truck rumbled past. A car door slammed across the street. But none of it mattered. He was still waiting for them. The townsfolk started arriving too. Ramona from the diner brought a heavy blanket and a plate of grilled chicken. She knelt beside Ethan, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. "I always knew he was waiting for someone," she whispered, "but I didn't know who." A few truckers who had seen Shadow over the years stopped by to pay their respects, their weathered faces soft with emotion. One man took off his cap and stood silently for a moment, nodding toward the dog. "Some hearts," he murmured, "just don't let go." As the night wore on, the temperature dropped. Ethan pulled his coat tighter and crouched beside Shadow, staying silent. There was nothing to say. The air was thick with anticipation and grief and something else. Hope, raw and unspoken. Around 3 a.m., Shadow shifted. Just slightly. His ears perked. His tail gave the tiniest flick. Ethan looked up sharply. "What is it, boy?" Shadow didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just stared into the dark highway as if he could feel something coming. And he could. Headlights. Far off in the distance, but approaching fast. A single car. Ethan stood. His pulse spiked. This was it. The vehicle slowed as it neared the gas station, tires crunching against gravel. The engine cut off. The door opened. A woman stepped out first, wrapped in a long coat, her hands shaking. Her eyes scanned the empty lot until they landed on the dog. "Shadow!" Olivia's voice broke like a wave. Shadow stood, ears erect, body trembling. He didn't run. Not yet. From the back seat, a teenage boy stepped out. He was taller now. His hair was longer. But his eyes, those soft, hopeful eyes, hadn't changed. "Shadow," Landon whispered, barely audible over the wind. "It's me." And then after 4 long years, the world finally moved. He didn't bark. He didn't run. He just stared, frozen in time, until the voice he'd waited for finally reached him. "Shadow," Landon said again, louder this time, taking a hesitant step forward. "It's me. I'm here, buddy." The dog didn't move. The air was still. Even the crickets seemed to go silent. Then, his ears twitched. His nose lifted. A soft, choked whimper escaped from deep in his chest. A sound not heard in years. His legs trembled beneath him. His tail began to sway. Just a little. And then he bolted. "Landon!" Olivia gasped. Shadow charged across the cracked pavement, kicking up dust as he ran full speed toward the boy who had never left his heart. Landon dropped to his knees, arms open wide, his face already wet with tears. When Shadow reached him, it wasn't gentle. It was everything. He crashed into Landon's chest, knocking him back, whining, pawing, licking, crying with every ounce of emotion his body could release. Landon clung to him, burying his face into the thick, dusty fur. "You waited," he sobbed. "You really waited." Olivia knelt beside them, arms wrapping around both dog and boy. Grant stood behind, his tough exterior crumbling as he placed a hand on Shadow's back and whispered, "Good boy. You found your way back." Shadow let out a deep exhale, a sound of relief, of release, of finally. People watched from a distance. Some recorded. Others cried openly. But no one spoke. The reunion unfolding in front of them was sacred. Ethan stood nearby, camera forgotten, his throat tight with emotion. He'd seen stories of survival, of rescue, of redemption, but nothing like this. This wasn't just a dog finding his way home. This was a soul recognizing its other half. The Turners stayed beside Shadow for what felt like hours. They didn't rush it. They didn't try to leash him or pull him away. They just let him be. For the first time in years, Shadow didn't flinch when touched. He didn't back away. He stayed, pressed close, grounded by their scent, their voices. Landon whispered again and again, "You're safe now. I'm here. You don't have to wait anymore." When it was finally time to go, Landon opened the back door of the car. Shadow hesitated. Ethan held his breath. But then, Shadow stepped inside, on his own. No leash, no commands, just choice. He curled up on the back seat beside Landon, his body heavy with exhaustion, but his eyes soft with peace. Landon leaned against him and didn't let go. The doors shut. The car pulled onto the road, and for the first time in 4 years, Shadow didn't stay behind. But going home didn't mean everything would be easy. Sometimes healing takes longer than the wait. He was home, but home didn't feel the same, and neither did he. The Turner family's house in Willowdale was nothing like the one Shadow remembered. The old home, the one in Cedar Valley, was sold years ago after the accident. The new one had larger rooms, different smells, and a backyard instead of a front porch. To Shadow, it was unfamiliar territory, a place without memories. When the car door opened and Landon stepped out, Shadow followed cautiously. His paws touched the pavement with hesitation. He sniffed the air, ears turning with every distant sound. Olivia held the front door open, and Shadow stood at the threshold, staring. Inside was warm, safe, full of voices he once knew. But safety, after 4 years of cold and wind and fear, felt strange. He didn't bolt, but he didn't go in, until Landon knelt beside him and whispered, "It's okay. You're home." That word, home, somehow unlocked something in him. Slowly, Shadow stepped inside. The living room had a soft rug. His old dog bed, saved and stored away for years, now sat freshly laid out in the corner. Landon patted it. "Remember this?" Shadow sniffed it, then turned away and curled up beside the back door instead. He lay there that entire night, silent, eyes open, watching the door. Landon slept nearby, curled up in a blanket on the hardwood floor. He didn't try to pet Shadow. He just stayed close, like the dog once had for him. The days that followed were hard. Shadow didn't eat at first. He didn't respond to toys or treats, or even the sound of his name. He refused to sleep on the dog bed. He only rested near exits, always watching, always waiting. The trauma was deep, etched into his very bones. 4 years of loneliness don't disappear with a car ride and a hug. Olivia spent quiet hours sitting near him, reading aloud from the book she used to read Landon when he was a child. Grant sat with him in the evenings, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, offering his presence without pressure. And Landon? He gave Shadow what he had given no one else, his full heart. He waited. He waited for the dog who had waited for him. And then, one morning, everything changed. Landon woke early, habit now. He tiptoed downstairs and paused at the bottom step. The house was still, quiet. A soft light filtered through the curtains. Shadow was not by the door. He was on the dog bed, curled up, breathing slow, steady, peaceful. Landon didn't move, didn't blink. He just watched. After all the noise, the fear, the ache, this moment of calm felt like a miracle. Slowly, he sent a text to his mom upstairs. He's sleeping on his bed. Seconds later, her reply, "Don't wake him. Let him feel safe." And that's what they did. They let him rest. They let him believe. Because for the first time since he disappeared, Shadow wasn't on guard. He was home. But true healing doesn't come in sleep. It comes in trust. And the next test was waiting just outside the door. Healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes one loud sound is all it takes to pull you back into the storm. It had been nearly 2 weeks since Shadow came home. Slowly, the walls he had built inside him began to crack. He started eating regularly, drinking water without hesitation, even resting beside Landon on the couch. His tail wagged now, soft, unsure, but there. But there were still moments, quiet flashes of fear. Every time someone opened a door too fast, Shadow flinched. If a neighbor's car backfired, his ears shot up and his muscles tightened. The front yard? Off limits. He wouldn't cross the threshold. Landon understood. He never forced it. But one afternoon, the sky was clear, the wind gentle, and Landon stood beside the back door holding Shadow's leash. "Want to try?" he asked gently, voice light. "Just a few minutes. I'll be right with you." Shadow sniffed the air. His body was tense but not resisting. Together, they stepped outside. Landon let the leash hang loose, walking slowly across the yard. Shadow followed, cautious but curious. He sniffed the grass, looked up at the sky, took it all in. It was progress. Until... pop! A burst of sound cracked through the neighborhood. Fireworks, random, loud, cruel. Shadow froze. Every hair on his back stood up, his body tense like a coiled spring. "Shadow," Landon whispered, trying to stay calm. But instinct took over. In a flash, Shadow bolted, breaking free from the leash, sprinting across the yard toward the open gate. "No!" Landon ran after him, heart pounding, lungs burning. "Shadow, wait!" He turned the corner and saw the dog, standing at the edge of the road, chest heaving, eyes wild. 4 years of waiting, and now Shadow was seconds away from running again. "Please," Landon cried, "don't go." Shadow turned to look at him, and in that look was conflict, the same fear that once drove him to flee, the same instinct to run when the world became too loud. But also, something new, a choice. His tail flicked, his ears perked. And then, he stepped forward, one paw, then another. He walked to Landon, slowly, cautiously, until his head pressed into the boy's chest. Landon dropped to his knees, arms wrapping around him. "You're safe. You're safe now. You don't have to run." Shadow let out a low, shaky breath, as if finally letting go of the weight he'd carried for years. That night, for the first time, Shadow slept at Landon's side. Not just nearby, but close, his head on the boy's chest, like he used to. And in the dark, Landon whispered, "You remember, don't you?" Shadow's tail gave a soft thump. He wasn't the same dog who had waited in silence for 4 years. He was something more now. Survivor, fighter, family. For the first time in years, he wasn't watching the road. He was watching the boy. and he was no longer waiting. He was home. The days grew longer, the winds warmed, and with each sunrise, Shadow shed a little more of the weight he'd carried for so long. No longer did he linger by the door. He now roamed the backyard freely, tail high, chest proud. He explored, sniffed, chased falling leaves, and lay in the grass with his eyes closed, not in fear but in peace. Landon noticed everything. How Shadow walked beside him now without a leash. How he followed him from room to room. How he would lay his head on Landon's lap during movie nights, or nuzzle his hand when he felt overwhelmed. There were still traces of the past. The way he paused at loud noises, the slight startle when strangers visited. But those moments passed quicker now. He no longer looked over his shoulder, waiting for things to fall apart. Because now he knew. He belonged. One golden afternoon, Landon knelt in the backyard, holding a tennis ball. Shadow stood a few feet away, ears perked. "You ready for this?" Landon grinned. He tossed the ball. Shadow hesitated only a second, then took off like a bolt, bounding through the grass, paws thudding joyfully against the earth. He chased it, caught it, turned and galloped back with his tail wagging wildly. "Good boy," Landon laughed, and Shadow barked, a loud, joyful bark that startled even himself. It was the first bark they'd heard since the day he was found. Inside, Olivia and Grant watched from the window, hands clasped together. "He's really back," Olivia whispered. Grant nodded slowly. "Every piece of him." That night, Shadow curled beside Landon on the floor, his body relaxed, his breathing steady. Landon opened an old photo album and showed Shadow pictures from years ago. Baby photos, holiday snapshots, images of a smaller boy with a floppy-eared pup in his lap. "You remember these?" Landon whispered, his fingers brushing a torn photo of them both asleep on the couch. "You've always been my best friend." Shadow looked up at him and then gently placed his paw on the boy's chest. No words, no sound. Just that quiet connection between a boy and the dog who never gave up on him. 4 years. 4 years of storms, hunger, fear, hope. 4 years of waiting in silence. Shadow's journey wasn't just one of survival. It was proof that loyalty endures even when the world forgets. That hope doesn't fade just because time passes, and that sometimes the ones we think are lost are simply waiting for us to come back. He was no longer the ghost of a past life. He was Shadow, a survivor, a brother, a hero, a family member returned not just to a house, but to the hearts who had never stopped loving him. If this story touched your soul, do one thing. Never overlook the dog sitting by the road. You never know who they're waiting for. Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances. Because Shadow's story proves hope is never wasted.